Welcome back to the Unboxed broadcast. Today, Dr. Davis and I conclude part two of our discussion how leaders can manage the anxiety of layoffs, firing, and parting with a team member. We're ready to dive in. We're excited that you're here. So stick around as we help you unbox the power and potential of your leadership.
I'm Dr. Robert Davis, family life educator and leadership coach. This is my co-host, R.P. Soriano. Soriano attended Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, worked in the financial industry, and was an international consultant before partnering with me to launch UnBoxed to Lead. Me? Well, I worked for over 20 years as a senior pastor and a community organizer. Then I retired and started a leaders peer support community called UnBoxed to Lead. Soriano and I have been friends since the early 90s, and with our varied experiences and expertise, we help leaders reach the next level in their leadership. So join us for the next few moments as we unbox the power and the potential of your relationships, your leadership, and your life.
Welcome back, one and all, wherever in the world you may be. I'm R.P. Soriano, and with me once again, is Dr. Robert Davis. He's a leadership enrichment and family life relationship expert. He's the founder of Unboxed to Lead, author of Seasoned with Grace, God's Recipe for Healthy Family Communication, and author of the book, The 12 Steps to Becoming an Unboxed Leader. I'm glad that we are still alive, my friend, that our executive producer has not murdered us both. But we're here. So how are you, my friend?
Man, like yourself, I am glad to be alive because we make the life hard for our executive producer.
I think we should release a B-roll tape just so that people can hear the frustration and the anger in our poor producer's face, and man, having to herd the cats that we are and to deal with our nonsense. Thank you, Bobby, for being who you are, man. We appreciate it. So at any rate, I want to remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe to the broadcast, even if Bobby is telling you not to. Also, be sure to follow all of our social pages as well as our blog page at our website, www.unboxedtolead.com. There you can access all the past episodes of our broadcasts and webinars, and you can also sign up for our newsletter so you never miss out on the latest content or specials that we may be offering. So, Robert, we are picking up our conversation or our discussion about managing anxiety, how leaders manage anxiety when it comes to layoffs, firings, or parting with team members. And you have identified eight ways or 8 points that will help that can help help leaders minimize anxiety flooding into the workplace system. The first point you said, we went through two of them. The first point you said is that the leader is the main thermostat or the regulator of the intensity of anxiety in a system. Yeah. And the second point was that you need to be a consistent, principled leader, and that these 2 points, as we started from the 8, are the beginning of how a leader manages anxiety for their team.
And let me say this, I have to fire someone on Friday, March the 31st. What should I do on Friday, March the 31st? I wish that you had started talking to me on March the 30th, 2022, versus trying to figure out what to do on March the 31st, 2023, because there has to be a level of consistency if you really want to lower the temperature. Right. We know that you're the leader. So that's very, very important. All right. Well, you ready for me to jump into the next one?
Yeah, let's pick up point 3 and let's go from there.
Okay. So as Raphael has shared the other 2 points, point number 3 is leaders should seek to become aware of how they function when they are anxious. So spend time thinking through and writing down, this is what I typically do when I'm anxious. So let me tell you what Robert Davis does, because I've spent time. Robert Davis tries to over-explain. I mean, because if I can just explain it well enough, then everyone else will be calm and they won't realize how nervous and anxious that I am. So that's that. And I have several techniques that I use. I'm talking about counterproductive techniques.
Mhm.
By the way, I want you to know that over explaining, as some people call it, mansplaining. You should see how disgusted women are when I become anxious, especially my wife and other women that I've worked with. When I become anxious and I start over explaining, because of course, without even realizing it, I'm coming across as if I'm condescending, like they're stupid, and that's really not what I'm trying to do. But this is one of the ways that I try to manage my anxiety. So now that I'm aware of that, and like I said, there are several things that I do. But now that I'm aware of that, I can go into a situation saying, Robert, you know that when you go in there, you're going to over explain, which is going to come across as being condescending and talking to people like they're stupid. That's not the way that you really think about these people, but that is going to be the way that you're going to come across to them. So, Robert, how do you need to show up to let these people know that you view them as competent, that you view them as able people?
Mhm.
And
Right.
so to really spend some time thinking through that. How do I show up when I am anxious? Because again, we're talking about what Unboxed to Lead deals with, and that is focusing on self, on how I show up as a leader, focusing on my personal and professional life goals. So, how am I showing up when I'm anxious? And the more you can be self aware about that, the easier it becomes then to regulate and to devise better strategies.
Yeah, and I think that some of that points back to the second point, which is to be a consistent, principled leader.
Yes.
If your team knows you to be a respectful, principled person who is, who treats everyone with equity and treats everyone with respect and doesn't triangulate, doesn't take sides, doesn't do any of these things, the people that you are leading will be a little more gracious in your moments of anxiety when they say that's kind of not like Robert. Robert isn't the kind of guy that would talk down to people. You've earned some
Yes.
capital with your consistency. They might be, like you said, they might be upset about it. They might find it offensive, but at least they're in a you have developed a type of relationship where they could at least come and talk to you and point that out, as opposed to saying, man, you can't talk to this guy because he's just going to lose it, or he thinks he walks on water, or whatever the case may be. It's just unapproachable. But they know that that's not where your heart is. They know who you are because you've been consistent that way, and they can bring it up.
And I want you to think about this, and I'm
Or
pretty sure
take that
everyone
forward.
has already figured out that one of the points is going to be dealing with communication.
Yeah.
But imagine if the leader communicates to his or her team that they struggle with anxiety in this way.
Hmm.
Hey, listen, team, let me just be honest with y'all. When I become anxious, when I'm a little nervous, this is one of the things that I do. I remember what was her name, Gilligan or whatever her name was from Saturday Night Live, and she said, "Whenever I become nervous, I stick my
Oh
fingers
yeah,
in my
teenager.
armpits,
Yeah, 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 and
smell it
smell
like
them.
that." And I said, "Yeah, don't do that. Okay, don't do that." But sharing with your team, hey, listen, team, you might notice that when I'm a little nervous, here's some of the things that I do, and I just kind of want to make, just by putting it out there on that table, by being aware of what you're doing, it helps an awful lot, and sharing that in an appropriate way, and especially during times of calmness. And we've talked about this a lot here at Unboxed, and we coach this at Unboxed to Lead, and that is to share with your team what your principles are, and even as appropriate what some of the challenges, some of your quirks are, so your team is prepared. Okay, I see what's going on here. He's a little nervous. And they you'll be surprised at how people are understanding when you're honest with them. That's just human nature. People are understanding, that doesn't give you a license to be a jerk. But if you say, hey man, this is one of the things, like for me, I tend to over explain. People get a little understanding, and sometimes they'll even help to ease the anxiety, the tension, by saying, Robert, you must be a little nervous because you're over explaining. Oh, you know what, you're right. I'm glad you said that. Let me take a deep breath.
Now
And
let me explain why I'm over explaining. I think there's something to being, to humor and being able to, be self-deprecating. And our previous guest, Christina Cooper Sanford, and not only in the interview, but in the blog post that she guest wrote for us.
you got to check that out.
Yeah, it's a really great article, but it really talks about womanhood and femininity and being able to be vulnerable and to be open with your team about where your challenges are, where your weaknesses are. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be this invincible, hiding behind the power of leadership. I think she talks about it in her blog post. So I think that's a very thing. And I think that it resonated with me as well, as just, as a man, that, you can be open with your team on where your challenges are. In fact, you actually, in my opinion, when you do that, you open the door for other team members to bring their strengths to the table. So they might have some kind of skill or some kind of strength that you can lean on, that it's time for them to, step up to the plate, and they can help you in that. Hey, I'm not good in this area, or I struggle with this area. Instead of thinking that, hey, if they know that, they're going to put a knife in my back and try to sabotage me, the complete opposite would happen. Hey, we need to rally to the commander's side, to our leader's side. This is an area where they struggle. Let's let me do my part.
Exactly. That is so rich. I appreciate that. Number 4, leaders should pre-develop strategies to manage their anxiety during and after the firing process. So again, if this all kind of builds upon each other. So the more that I am aware of how I manage myself when I'm anxious, the more that I realize that I am the thermostat, then I can begin to pre-develop strategies that will help me to manage my anxiety during and after the firing process. I know it's going to be difficult. Whoever the person may be, maybe someone that I love, maybe someone that I hate. Either way, if it's someone that I hate, and I was so glad. Oh, was I so glad when they did X, Y, and Z, and now I can fire them. Or someone who I love, man, this is breaking my heart. There's still a lot of emotions and a lot of reactivity that's bound up in that. And so for me to say, okay, I realize that, this situation is difficult, it's tense, stressful. So let me develop some strategies on how I'm going to go through. And you'll be surprised. We provide coaching at UnBoxed to Lead, but I'm often amazed that just as people talk through and write through how they want to handle situations, man, you'll be surprised at just how much you already have inside of you that's already there. And you're like, man, I didn't realize I was that creative. Yeah, you are. You just got to ask the right questions and think about the right, about the right things that you need to look at.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Robert, because part of managing anxiety is so that you can calm down to get to these solutions. Because a lot of times, if you're so anxious about it, you just don't want to think about it. You don't want to face it. You just say, I'll just go in there cold and just whatever happens. But if you can calm down and say, all right, let me face this now. Let me prepare before I go in there. You can relax yourself and get calm. That's when the solutions come. And I think all leaders know that. They know that intuitively and through experience. Yes, something hits you, and once you kind of get past that initial shock, okay, now it's time to settle down and let's get to work.
And where a lot of leaders get twisted around is that step number 3, which is they know this, but they're not aware of what they're doing and what they have a tendency to do.
Yeah.
They're not aware of it, and so that ends up being a problem for them. The fact that they're not really aware about what they need to, and et cetera.
Yeah.
So that poses the challenge.
Yeah.
Number 5, it helps to understand how anxiety spreads through a relationship system. And when I say that, that means anticipating the person being released and the other people in the relationship system and how they will predictably respond. People will become scared And what do people do when they are afraid? We've talked about this in previous broadcasts. They either distance, or they cut off, or they triangle somebody in, which is basically a way of saying help, or they fight, which is conflict, or they pursue, which is, which is another way that we handle, pursuing people. That's another way that we handle when we are afraid, when we are anxious. And so when a leader understands the predictable steps and the predictable way that the system will react to you taking a mature position and you having to take leadership stance and to make executive decisions. When you understand that, again, that kind of goes back to tip number 4. It helps you to develop strategies to manage your anxiety and to develop strategies on how you want to interact with the people that are in the group. That becomes an important thing.
So let me ask you a question about that. And I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. There's one thing from understanding the system and understanding how people might react to the system. What goes into being comfortable with how people react? Just understanding that they're just going to have their reaction without trying to. Because I know with me and my personality type and the way that I am, it's very hard for me to let people have a reaction. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult in my personal life. In my professional life, it's very difficult for me to let people have their reaction if it's different from the way that I think that they should be reacting. I immediately try to intervene. I immediately try to tell them that why their thinking is not the right way to think about this. It's not the right way to react about that. Or I try to comfort, I try to save, I try to intervene, or whatever the case may be, because it's hard for me to see other people struggle and suffer without me wanting to get in there and try to fix it.
I mean, I don't want to get too wonky, but there are the together and separateness forces that exist in all human beings, that desire to be alone and individual, and then that desire to be connected and one. And oftentimes when we are struggling with how someone else reacts or responds, it's because of our overconnectedness to them. Mm. And so one way to think about this is this right here. When you look at a child, let's say at a Walmart or something, that's on the floor falling out, and then the parent gives in and says, okay, here, you can have the toy, you can have the candy. What you're watching is the parent being so enmeshed or overconnected to the child that the parent is unable to tolerate their level of pain. Mm-hmm. So what is the level of pain that you're able to tolerate in others? And so one of the steps and one of the things that's so helpful for leaders is, again, the more that you understand, as the old NBC slogan was, the more you know kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Remember that? The more you know, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. But the more you know, that really does help. The more you understand, this is how people react. These are the predictable steps. People are going to say, you're wrong. Change back. If you don't, here are the consequences. Whenever you make a mature stance, it's okay. The more that you identify what your principles are and start to share those principles and to really be conscientious about living those principles out, the easier it becomes for you to tolerate people who disagree, people who are going in another direction. So there's no magic pill, but it is long, intentional, deliberate work at becoming more of a self, more knowledgeable and secure in who you are. And that in of itself helps so very much.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced that NBC. What was the slogan?
They do those little public announcements.
Oh, that's right.
The more you know. No, the more you know.
Of course, my favorite is G.I. Joe, and knowing is half the battle.
Now you know, yeah.
And knowing is half the battle.
It really is.
You shared a story with me that I want you to share with our audience about an incident where you had to let someone go. I know you can't go into all of the details of this. I wish that you could, because it has to be one of the most harrowing and yet entertaining, but yet serious stories that I've ever heard about an employee, having to let somebody go. But you had a situation where there was a person you had to let go because an affair that they were having had basically spilled out into the organization, and it just got pretty crazy. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I think that this ties into understanding the system, right? Understanding how what's going to happen and predicting these things, the conflict, the cutoff, all of these kinds of things.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, you are about to be brought into another episode of Watch Robert Screw This Up, because that's exactly what I did. But just give you a little background. In a city not more than 10,000 miles from here, and this was many years ago, we had a situation where one of our workers was having an extramarital affair. That's his business. He was having an extramarital affair, and he was bringing his lover up to the job, and then the husband came up to the job looking for him. There was a gun involved. It really got ugly. Threats. I was threatened. It got really ugly. But this person, man, which is why he probably was successful with the ladies, was just well beloved, and very talented. And so I had to let him go because of all the drama and the danger he was putting the rest of the team in.
Yeah,
so I had to let him go, and I did such a poor job with it. I did a poor job. Every step that I'm talking about here, I screwed up. Had no, I wasn't operating off of guiding principles per se. I didn't take into consideration that I'm the thermostat. I didn't, I wasn't aware of how the anxiety functions, and how I function when I'm anxious. I didn't develop any strategy to try to minimize the anxiety during and afterwards. And I didn't have a full understanding about how anxiety spreads throughout the system. I mean, I just dropped it in every which way. And it really had a negative impact on the morale of the rest of the team members. Again, some people, and there were individuals who voiced it, we're not the morality police. And, when this is a challenge, when you're in leadership, especially when it's an HR thing, there's only so much you can share.
Right.
So you have to keep stuff quiet. And so the person that's being let go can kind of, develop a narrative. And
or the people they've triangled into it.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. They have relationships with people at the job. They're friends on Facebook. They're texting each other and they're calling each other. And this is what happened. And, Robert's the big bad guy. I mean, which 99% of the time I am the big bad guy. But not understanding and not having a strategy really put me in a terrible position. And not just me, because I don't want to make it poor me, but it put the rest of the team in a very poor position because I just didn't have a way to manage that whole situation.
I would say that was that being such an extreme situation where, there's a weapon involved, there's threatening, this is really this becomes life and death here. It's hard to, I believe that those steps would have been helpful for you. I believe that in the most extreme cases, that would have been, these 8 steps will be helpful. But I also think that, man, that's such an extreme event that you definitely got to give yourself some space, because I don't know if the best prepared person in the world would be able to handle someone's extracurricular activities putting their life and the lives of their team in danger. I mean, that's almost like that person's got a good cursing out coming. They would be so lucky for this to be handled in any professional manner. I mean, they would be so lucky that would be handled in any kind of professional way. So,
just like, and I always use the analogy of boxers, just like, with boxers who practice and practice and practice, whoever they step into the ring with, when you look at Floyd Mayweather or Muhammad Ali or Sugar Ray Leonard, whoever they step in the ring with, they're so prepared, or Marvin Hagler, whoever they step in the ring with, they're so prepared that when the person does things that's different, they're able to adjust.
Yeah.
And that's called that ring IQ. So when you have the knowledge and you know these tips, you can start to make adjustments on the fly. When you don't have it, you're in the situation that I was in, which is you're not able to make those adjustments on the fly. You're not able to really develop strategies.
Just getting whipped all over the ring. I mean, just I mean, the corner is screaming at you. Get out of the corner. Get off the rope.
I've been trying to do that for the last 20 minutes. He hits me. I go against the ropes, and he keeps hitting me.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is they interview your corner man and ask what happened to Davis during the fight. Just man, this is what happens when you're not prepared. I mean, this is the guy just doesn't want to prepare, and he just gets whipped all over the place. It's just embarrassing.
UnBoxed provides a full-service leaders peer support community that helps high-level leaders become more authentic leaders who build healthy workplace cultures and reach their personal life goals. To learn more and discover how we can take your leadership and your life to the next level, please visit our website at unboxedtolead.com. That's unboxed, 2lead.com. Again, that's unboxed, 2